Derrion Childs. Derrion D. Money Childs became one of the earliest casualties connected to the violent aftermath of young Dolph's assassination. Childs was a 21-year-old comedian from Memphis who had built a local following online. Just days after Dolph was killed on November 17, 2021, Childs posted on Facebook about the shooting. One of his comments read, "Man, them folks just killed young Dolph. I love Memphis 'cause we so gangsta." The post spread quickly, and for many who saw it, the words were interpreted as mocking Dolph's death.
A comedian in Memphis named Demuni, you know what I'm talking about?
I saw it on the internet. I don't know him.
Yeah, this Memphis comedian posted up a picture with him and Yo Gotti. And he's like, "Man, them folks just killed Dolph. I love Memphis. We so gangster." And he gets killed right afterwards.
His family insisted otherwise. Child's sister, Shemexia Mason, told WREG that his words had been taken out of context. She explained that he wasn't celebrating Dolph's murder, but commenting on the wave of violence Memphis was already experiencing. According to her, Derrion compared Memphis to Chicago, pointing out how dangerous the city had become, and specifically how shocking it was that Dolph had been killed at a cookie shop in his own neighborhood. She stressed that his intention wasn't disrespect, but by then, the perception had already taken root online.
He's like, "I'm not joking about Dolph Death." He said, "I'm just saying that Memphis is basically the next Chicago because anybody can get killed in Memphis." He was like, "It's crazy how young Dolph actually went to a cookie place and got killed in his own neighborhood."
On November 23rd, less than a week after those posts, Childs was gunned down at a Valero gas station in the Fraser neighborhood of Memphis. Reports confirmed he was shot multiple times, rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and did not survive. Witnesses told police that the shooters fled the scene in two separate vehicles, a dark-colored Infiniti SUV and a dark-colored Jeep Cherokee. Despite that information, no suspects were ever publicly identified, and no arrests have been confirmed in his case. For investigators, the timing of Child's killing was impossible to ignore. It came so soon after his social media comments that questions about retaliation became immediate. Police said they were looking into whether his murder was connected to other shootings that had already taken place in the tense days following Dolph's death. They never confirmed a direct link, but for many in Memphis, the pattern was clear enough. His death was viewed as an early warning that the situation was spiraling beyond Dolph himself into something broader that touched anyone who spoke too freely or was perceived as showing disrespect. Big Nuski. On the evening of January 28, 2022, just a little over 2 months after Dolph was gunned down at Makita's Cookies, Nuski was shot and killed at the New Horizon River Apartments on Kazasa Road. It was around 7 p.m. when gunfire broke out, leaving the 26-year-old rapper dead at the scene. Known in Memphis as part of Moneybagg Yo's Bread Gang and cousin to Big 30, Nuski wasn't just another upcoming rapper. His ties to people already in the spotlight of the Dolph case made his killing stand out immediately.
If you look at the fact that Moneybagg Yo has a whole bunch of enemies from the beginning, before he even got signed to CMG.
What made Nuski's death draw even more attention was his alleged connection to Justin Johnson, better known as Straight Dropp, one of the two men charged with pulling the trigger on Dolph. Photos circulated online showing Nuski and Johnson pictured with the same vehicle, a detail that suggested they were at least in the same orbit. After Nuski was killed, Johnson himself, sitting in jail at the time, went on social media and posted a photo of Nuski with the caption, "Lost my brother, fighting to keep my head up." That post confirmed that whatever the exact relationship, the bond between the two men was real. The shooting came at a moment when Memphis was already tense. Dolph's murder in November 2021 had lit a fuse, and smaller incidents of retaliation were beginning to show. Things only got worse after then. Anthony Big Jook Mims. Big Jook, the older brother of rapper Yo Gotti, was gunned down in Memphis on January 13, 2024. The shooting took place outside Perignon's Restaurant and Event Center on Winchester Road, where Jook had been attending a repast. Around 4:15 p.m., gunmen opened fire in the parking lot, striking Jook while he was inside a vehicle. Another man was also hit and airlifted to Regional 1 Hospital in critical condition. Jook was rushed to St. Francis Hospital, where he was pronounced dead.
According to the Memphis Police Department, the victim was inside a vehicle at the time and was brought here to St. Francis Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased.
Memphis police quickly described the incident as a targeted attack. Witnesses reported the shooters fled in a white Ford Explorer with dark tint. No suspects have been named and no arrests have been made. Jook's murder did not happen in isolation. His name had already surfaced months earlier inside a federal courtroom tied to the young Dolph case. During testimony, co-defendant Cornelius Smith identified Jook in photographs presented by prosecutors, referring to him as the money man calling the shots. According to the testimony, Jook was present when arrangements were discussed with Justin Johnson and other individuals accused in the killing. Prosecutors even introduced cell phone records they said connected Jook to Hernandez Govan, the alleged middleman now charged with ordering the hit, as well as to the shooters themselves. In court, one witness testified that Jook's own girlfriend described him as being at the top of the chain. While Jook was never charged, his alleged role in financing the plot remained a key piece of evidence being examined. His murder occurred before prosecutors could directly question him under oath. That night outside Perignon's, gunfire left no doubt that someone wanted Jook gone. Memphis police confirmed video evidence was being reviewed, but stated no clear suspects had been identified. They also made clear that based on how the attack unfolded, they believed Jook was specifically targeted.
We do feel like the individual that was shot was possibly targeted by the suspect.
The second victim's identity was not disclosed publicly, but his survival ensured there was at least one other eyewitness to the shooting. The timing of Jook's death was significant. It came while legal proceedings around young Dolph's murder were still active and with multiple defendants awaiting trial. His killing removed a figure who had been directly named in testimony as financially backing the plot against Dolph. Without charges ever filed and with no chance for prosecutors to bring him in, the case lost one of its most controversial links, Joshua Teezy Taylor. Joshua Taylor, also known in Memphis as CEO Teezy, was shot to death on June 14, 2023 in the Orange Mound neighborhood. Memphis police responded around 12:56 p.m. to Spotswood Avenue near Bunton Street, where they found Taylor inside a vehicle suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The 26-year-old was a father of two and widely recognized as a leader of the Trula Mafia, one of the city's most active street organizations. His killing was treated as a homicide, but no suspects were publicly identified and no arrests have been made. The events leading up to his death traced back to the night before. On June 13th, Taylor had been at his girlfriend's house and was reported to be in good spirits when he left. Not long after, gunfire erupted in Orange Mound. Witnesses later described what sounded like a shootout rather than a quiet ambush. According to those accounts, Taylor returned fire and managed to leave the immediate scene, but he never made it far. His body was discovered in his car the following day, suggesting he had been mortally wounded and driven away before succumbing to his injuries. Taylor's position in Memphis carried heavy weight. As the de facto head of the Trula Mafia, he oversaw a crew that had been repeatedly linked in law enforcement files to the suspects in young Dolph's 2021 assassination. In February 2022, Memphis police publicly named him as a person of interest in the Dolph case. He was never charged, but that label followed him. Prosecutors described the Trula Mafia as being closely tied to several men who have since been indicted for Dolph's murder, including Justin Johnson and Cornelius Smith. By virtue of his leadership role, Taylor was repeatedly mentioned in reports as someone whose approval or direction could have influenced major moves. In the hierarchy of Memphis street politics, that made him a high-profile target. Following the shooting, Memphis police confirmed that the investigation was ongoing, but gave no further comment about whether the case had any link to young Dolph's murder.
MPD says the investigation is ongoing, refusing to answer any questions about the case or whether it has any link to Memphis rapper Young Dolph.
His family and girlfriend mourned his death publicly. In posts on social media, his girlfriend pushed back against commentary tying his death to Dolph, instead asking people to focus on her personal loss. Others in Memphis, however, pointed to his notoriety as a leader of Trula Mafia and a previously named person of interest, noting that his reputation and affiliations made him a marked man. At the time of his death, Taylor also faced unrelated legal issues. Records listed active warrants for charges including property theft between $10,000 and $60,000 and possession of a prohibited weapon. Those cases never reached trial because of his killing. Tomanuel Benson. On August 18, 2023, gunfire broke out at a BP gas station on South Parkway East in Memphis. The victim was identified as 28-year-old Tomanuel Benson, younger brother of rapper Black Youngsta. Security footage captured an unmasked gunman carrying out the attack in broad daylight before fleeing the scene. Memphis police confirmed that Benson was pronounced dead on sight. The brazen nature of the shooting stunned the area, and investigators quickly released a clear still image of the suspect, while Crime Stoppers offered a $5,000 reward for information. Tomanuel's death came in the middle of a long and bitter feud tied to his brother. Black Youngsta, born Sammy Benson, had been locked in conflict with young Dolph for years. That tension first made headlines in 2017, when Youngsta was arrested after more than 100 rounds were fired at Dolph's bulletproof SUV in Charlotte. Dolph survived the attempt, but the incident cemented a public and dangerous rivalry. Even after Dolph's death in 2021, Youngsta drew outrage for openly mocking him, performing diss tracks like Shake Some at clubs and filming a music video in a cemetery in front of a headstone marked with Dolph's family name, Thornton. Those moves inflamed tempers in Memphis and beyond, with many pointing out that in street culture, disrespect doesn't fade easily. When Tomanuel was killed, the connection was impossible to ignore. For police, it was another homicide in a city already struggling with violence. For the community, it carried a deeper meaning. The idea that when someone can't be reached directly, those closest to them often pay the price. Black Youngsta's response came swiftly on social media. In a series of Instagram posts, he grieved for his brother, but also promised retaliation. "I love you, my baby brother, rest up," he wrote before shifting to anger. "I'm gonna make the world pay, I swear to God, nobody safe, standing over everybody, 4LIFE. He ended his posts by declaring he was ready for whatever came next, writing, "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm not gone, feel sorry for nobody." Only God knows his words made clear that the loss had only hardened his stance. 6 months later, in February 2024, police arrested Randy Ewing Jr. in connection with the shooting. He was charged with voluntary manslaughter, employment of a firearm during a dangerous felony, and being a felon in possession of a handgun. His arrest gave some answers to the family, but not closure.
28-year-old Randy Ewing was taken into custody in Parkway Village last night after he was spotted by U.S. Marshals and the MPD fugitive team in the area of Crichton Avenue.
In May 2024, while free on a $36,000 bond, Ewing died unexpectedly. The cause of death was not made public. By September, Shelby County prosecutors announced the charges had been abated due to his passing, closing the case without a conviction. For Black Youngsta, Tomanuel's death was another devastating blow. He had already buried 2 brothers before this. In 2013, his youngest brother, Ronnie, was killed in Memphis. That loss shook him so badly that he briefly abandoned rap altogether, later admitting he had even considered. 6 years later, in 2019, another brother, Derrion Benson, known as Heavy Champ TD, was shot and killed in Miami. Each time, Youngsta returned to music, but the grief left its mark. By the time Tomanuel was killed in 2023, he had lost 3 brothers in a decade, each to gun violence. Destinee Govan. Destinee Govan, better known as rapper Lotta Cash Desto, was just 25 years old when her life was cut short in Houston, Texas. She was the daughter of Hernandez Govan, the man accused of orchestrating the killing of young Dolph. Unlike her father, Desto was focused on building a rap career. She had already signed to Lil Uzi Vert's label, recorded collaborations like Lunchroom and Vegas, and was working closely with Uzi, who supported her both personally and professionally. On September 24th, 2022, around 2:40 a.m., she was driving along the 5,500 block of Richmond Avenue with a female passenger when a dark vehicle pulled up. Two men got out and opened fire on her car. Desto tried to defend herself, returning shots from inside her vehicle, but she was fatally struck. Her passenger survived with injuries. Police later found one of the suspected shooters, 24-year-old Christian Isaiah Williams, nearby with a gunshot wound. He was arrested while recovering in the hospital and charged with murder. A second man, 19-year-old Jeremiah Smith, was arrested months later in Louisiana and also charged with her killing. The attack immediately drew attention because of who Desto's father was. By late 2022, Hernandez Govan had been named by prosecutors as the man who directed young Dolph's murder. Many in Memphis saw Desto's death as retaliation tied to that case, but in his own words, Govan denied that connection.
If that was the case, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'll just say that. My daughter was killed over a botched robbery.
In an interview after his arrest, he explained that his daughter was targeted for robbery, not revenge. According to court records and his account, the men who followed her that night admitted to spotting her in the club, recognizing her jewelry, and attempting to rob her after she left. Still, the circumstances surrounding her death fueled speculation. A Facebook post from Govan after the shooting only added to the conversation. In it, he wrote, "I think I curse you, Destinee, with my lifestyle. I apologize, baby." He later clarified that it wasn't an admission of responsibility, but rather a reflection on the influence his past had on her. He said she admired his image and personality, and he regretted not being a better role model.
Didn't you make a Facebook post after she passed away and you apologized, saying that your lifestyle may have cursed her?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Her death hit the music industry hard. Lil Uzi Vert covered the cost of her funeral and spoke about the bond they shared, saying she would call him daily to check in while he was in rehab. He even memorialized her in his music, mentioning the $200,000 he spent on her funeral. Other artists, including Kodak Black, expressed grief, with Kodak revealing he had been planning to sign her to his own label and invest in her career. Desmond Rogers. Desmond Rogers' name comes up often in street accounts connected to young Dolph's murder, even though his death never received the same media coverage as others tied to the case. Rogers was a Memphis man from Orange Mound who, according to multiple local reports and online discussions, was linked to the discovery of the white Mercedes-Benz used as the getaway car in Dolph's killing. That car was found abandoned outside a house in South Memphis days after the shooting, and its recovery became one of the first major breaks in the investigation. Rogers was believed by some in the community to have provided information about the car's location. Not long after, he was killed near the same area, leading to widespread claims that he was targeted for cooperating with police. Official reporting around Rogers' death remains scarce, and law enforcement never publicly confirmed a direct connection between his killing and the Dolph investigation. But within Memphis, the story of what happened to him became part of the larger web of violence that unfolded after November 2021. Rogers was not known as a major figure in the city's street scene, but his name was quickly attached to the Mercedes and its role in the case.
Hey, I remember Desmond Rogers, bro. It's just like they got killed right after the Mercedes got found. They parked that in the backyard.
The uncertainty around many of these killings has also blurred the line between fact and rumor. For example, after the death of Marcus Lake, who was said online to be the head of CMG Security, stories spread that he had been murdered in retaliation. It was later confirmed he had died of natural causes, showing how quickly speculation could take hold in such a tense environment. By contrast, in Rogers' case, the details remained unclear, but the timing of his death, so soon after the discovery of the Mercedes, ensured it became folded into the Dolph narrative. Justin Johnson, Better known by his rap name Straight Dropp, Justin was identified as one of the 2 gunmen who ambushed young Dolph outside Makita's Cookies. Just 23 years old at the time of his arrest, Johnson had already built a long record of violent crimes. In 2017, he opened fire with an assault rifle at a Memphis bowling alley, injuring 3 people. Despite the severity of that case, he received a 5-year sentence and served only 6 months before being released for good behavior. Later, he was convicted in federal court for a weapons charge and spent just over 2 years in prison before walking free again in 2021. Within months, he was back on the streets, and by November of that year, he was standing outside Makita's with a gun in his hands. Surveillance cameras captured Johnson and another man, Cornelius Smith, firing into the storefront as young Dolph shopped for cookies. The brazen attack was carried out in broad daylight, with witnesses nearby, leaving little question about what had happened. The footage quickly became central to the case, identifying Johnson as one of the shooters. According to prosecutors, Johnson had been promised $40,000 and the chance to advance his career under CMG if he carried out the hit. After the murder, Johnson posted on Instagram claiming he would turn himself in. Instead, he went on the run. On January 11, 2022, U.S. Marshals tracked him down and arrested him in Indiana. The arrest came after weeks of public attention, with his face plastered across news reports and social media. By then, evidence had already piled up. Photos and music videos linked Johnson and his associates to the same getaway car seen at the crime scene, a white Mercedes-Benz, and to weapons similar to those used in the shooting. In court, prosecutors laid out the timeline. Johnson and Smith had stalked Dolph, pulled up to Makita's in the stolen Mercedes, and opened fire. Dolph was struck multiple times and pronounced dead shortly after. The judge noted how the murder was carried out in a public space with no concern for bystanders, describing the act as one showing a complete lack of regard for life.
These were crimes that were committed in our community in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, other people around.
In September 2024, nearly 3 years after the killing, Johnson was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, but his punishment didn't stop there. Days later, Judge Jennifer Mitchell handed down an additional 35 years, 20 for conspiracy, and 15 for firearm possession. Those sentences run consecutive to his life term, meaning Johnson would not be eligible for parole until he is in his 70s.
Justin Johnson was already convicted and sentenced to life for the killing of Memphis rapper Young Dolph. Friday, he was back in court for sentencing on 2 additional charges: conspiracy to commit the murder and being a convicted felon in possession of a handgun.
This outcome sealed his fate. Once a small-time rapper trying to climb Memphis's rap ladder, he will now spend the rest of his life in prison. The same choices that gave him a reputation on the streets also left him as the face of one of Memphis's most high-profile murders, tied forever to the killing of young Dolph, Cornelius Smith Jr. Cornelius Smith Jr., 32, was identified as the second shooter in young Dolph's killing. He was already in custody before the murder charges were filed, picked up on December 9, 2021 for a November 10 carjacking. The stolen vehicle, a white Mercedes coupe, was later confirmed as the getaway car used at Makita's Cookies. That arrest tied him directly into the investigation. Smith's background showed a string of serious charges. In 2018, he faced aggravated assault and domestic assault, though that case was later dismissed. By 2021, he was back facing violent charges, and the Mercedes carjacking connected him to Justin Johnson, better known as Straight Dropp. Smith's name entered the headlines as the second gunman when prosecutors laid out surveillance footage, witness testimony, and physical evidence linking him to the ambush. In court, Smith took the stand and admitted to his role. He identified himself on video as the first man stepping out of the Mercedes, carrying a semi-automatic rifle.
First guy out of the car, who's that?
It's me.
That's you? Which one of the guns do you have?
I got the little Draco stairs on.
Okay, that's that semi-automatic weapon, is that right?
Yeah.
You ever shot that thing before?
Nah, I ain't never shot.
He described opening fire through the glass of Makita's cookies while young Dolph stood near the window. He testified that Johnson exited with a handgun and joined in, both of them unloading into the store before fleeing back to the car. He told the jury he didn't feel anything in that moment. "I just got out and started shooting," he said, explaining that he was looking for money and was deep into pills at the time. Smith also revealed details about how the hit came together. He testified that Hernandez Govan was the one who set it up, providing the weapons and pointing out Dolph's turkey giveaway as the opportunity. He said the supposed payout was $40,000, but he only received $800 before his arrest. Later, he claimed his lawyer was paid $50,000 by Gotti's brother, Anthony "Big Jook" Mims, though he denied knowing where that money came from. Prosecutors used his testimony to connect Govan and Johnson to the conspiracy, while the defense labeled Smith a pathological liar, willing to say anything to cut time off his sentence. Smith admitted on the stand that his conscience didn't catch up with him until he was sitting in jail, sober, and thinking about his actions. He said grief over his young son's death combined with drugs pushed him deeper into reckless decisions. During testimony, he described being hit by gunfire himself when Dolph's brother Marcus fired back at the shooters. Smith said he realized he had been grazed and pointed out a bullet hole in the Mercedes side window as they fled the scene. The defense pressed hard to discredit him. They argued that Smith's shifting stories and admitted drug use made him unreliable, pointing to contradictions in how he described payments and who was involved. His lawyers painted him as a man trying to trade information for leniency, but prosecutors leaned on his direct admission as crucial to securing convictions. As of August 2025, Smith faces charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He has pleaded not guilty and no trial date has been set. His testimony remains one of the most detailed first-hand accounts of what happened outside Makita's that day, connecting the hired hit, the shooters, and the wider network prosecutors say orchestrated the ambush. Jermarcus Johnson. Jermarcus Johnson, the half-brother of Justin Johnson, found himself drawn into the aftermath of young Dolph's murder not as one of the gunmen, but for his role in helping them once the crime was already committed. In November 2022, Memphis police identified him as the fourth suspect connected to the case. Unlike the others, Jermarcus was not accused of firing shots or being at the scene of Makita's cookies on the day of the killing. Instead, prosecutors charged him for the part he played in aiding his half-brother and Cornelius Smith after Dolph was gunned down. In June 2023, Jermarcus entered a guilty plea to 3 counts of accessory after the fact. In court, he admitted that he assisted Justin Johnson and Cornelius Smith while they were on the run. His role was mostly behind the scenes, but still serious in the eyes of investigators.
The jury has already heard bombshell testimony from Cornelius Smith, who admitted to killing young Dolph, along with Justin Johnson's half-brother.
Yeah, and so yesterday the jury heard from several other witnesses.
He acknowledged that he helped them communicate by cell phone and even stepped in to help one of them contact a probation officer so their cover would not be blown. By admitting his involvement, Jermarcus avoided a potential trial and received a sentence of 6 years probation in 2024, a much lighter outcome than those facing the central figures in the killing. The details of his cooperation came out during testimony in the broader trial proceedings. Prosecutors explained that Jermarcus's phone activity linked him to the men directly responsible for Dolph's murder, and his admissions made clear that he knowingly played a role in keeping them hidden during the crucial days after the shooting. Unlike his half-brother Justin Johnson, who is serving a life sentence for first-degree murder, Jermarcus avoided prison, but only by cutting a deal with the state. The terms of his plea agreement also left open the possibility that he may be called to testify against his brother or other co-defendants. By cooperating, he ensured leniency, but it also placed him in the difficult position of having to provide evidence in a case that involved his own family. During court hearings, prosecutors made it clear that his testimony could be required if needed in appeals or further proceedings connected to the conspiracy charges. At sentencing, Jermarcus expressed regret for his part in helping the men after the killing. But the judge emphasized that even limited involvement in such a high-profile murder case carried serious weight. For Memphis prosecutors, his plea was one more piece in the puzzle that linked the network of people around young Dolph's killing together. From those accused of pulling the triggers, to the man accused of setting it up, to those who helped cover their tracks afterward. As of now, Jermarcus Johnson is serving his probation. His sentence allows him to remain free under supervision instead of serving time behind bars, but his actions are still closely monitored. And while his punishment was lighter compared to his half-brother, his name is now permanently linked to the case that shook Memphis and the wider hip-hop world. Hernandez Govan. Hernandez Govan, 45, was indicted in November 2022 on charges of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Prosecutors described him as the man who set up young Dolph's killing, accusing him of recruiting Destinee Johnson and Cornelius Smith, supplying weapons, and alerting them that Dolph would be at Makita's Cookies during his annual Thanksgiving turkey giveaway. According to testimony, Govan told Smith and Johnson there was a $100,000 bounty on Dolph, and he would take a $10,000 cut once the job was done. Govan denied all of it. When he was arrested, he said the indictment felt unreal, especially coming just months after losing his daughter, brother, and grandmother in quick succession.
It was almost like a death blow considering that I just went through that situation with my daughter. I also had a brother of mine that died in a car wreck around that time, and my grandmother.
He described the timing as devastating and maintained that he had nothing to do with the murder. Despite the seriousness of the charges, he pleaded not guilty from the beginning and rejected a plea deal offered to him before trial. His attorney, Manny Aurora, mounted a defense that targeted both the investigation and the credibility of the state's witnesses. Aurora questioned the reliability of cell phone records, challenged whether investigators properly verified communication between the defendants, and repeatedly pointed to the inconsistencies in Cornelius Smith's testimony. Smith had testified that Govan organized the plot and gave him the weapons, but Aurora highlighted that Smith's lawyer received tens of thousands of dollars shortly after Smith's arrest, and Smith admitted he did not know where that money came from. The defense framed Smith as a man desperate to save himself, calling him a pathological liar who would say whatever prosecutors wanted in exchange for leniency. In May 2023, Govan was released on a $90,000 bond due to health issues with approval from Dolph's family. Under bond conditions, he was placed on house arrest and allowed to leave only for medical treatment or meetings with his lawyer. His attorney's reputation drew additional attention. Manny Aurora, a high-profile defense lawyer who previously represented figures like Gucci Mane, Lil Durk, and Pac-Man Jones, argued that Govan was unfairly painted as the mastermind without solid evidence.
Manny Aurora.
Manny Aurora, yes, sir.
Who is from Atlanta and has represented Lil Durk, Gucci Mane, Pac-Man Jones, and many others.
Correct, yes, sir.
Rumors spread online that Yo Gotti or others tied to CMG paid for Aurora's services, but both Govan and Aurora dismissed those claims. Govan said Aurora stayed with him even when his own funds ran out, describing their bond as personal as much as professional. When Govan's trial finally began in August 2025, the case came down to witness credibility and the strength of the state's evidence. Prosecutors leaned heavily on Smith's testimony and on recorded communications, but the defense emphasized contradictions and lack of physical proof tying Govan directly to the shooting. After 3 hours of deliberation, the Memphis jury returned a verdict of not guilty on all counts. Govan did not testify in his own defense. When the verdict was read, he hugged his lawyer and thanked the judge, calling the moment a chance to be born again. He told reporters afterward that he planned to restart his life and focus on positive things.